I'm Heidi Fokine, and I'm from Shelter Island, which is a little island off the end of Long Island, New York. I really do think that yoga found me, not the other way around. Truthfully, I was living in New York City and I took a crosstown bus to connect to a downtown bus. And on the crosstown trip, there was forever this dirty second floor window with the Om symbol in it. And I had this kind of like creepy feeling about it. Like, you know, it didn't attract me at all. And I think about that sometimes, you know, how my perception, how my life has so shifted as yoga came into my life. So that was sort of my first perception of yoga. I knew it was a yoga studio, that Om symbol, the dirty window, it just seemed so unappealing. But then I was a dancer living in New York, and some of the real hipster dancers started going to yoga class instead of dance classes to warm up, to set up for a day of rehearsing, whatever they're working, whatever they were, you know, rehearsing for. And so I followed suit, and I went to Jivamukti classes, you know, 2nd Avenue and 10th Street. And it was exotic and exhilarating and engaging and so incredibly challenging that I was immediately, drawn in fully. I spent a good time at that studio, and then I realized I had no idea what I was doing, and I really had to figure this out. So I started taking Iyengar classes. I met a teacher who was very important to me, Jenny Kapuler. She spoke from a dancer's perspective about yoga, and I needed that. I needed that bridge to take all the information I already had, leave what I didn't need of it behind, and understand what this new form was in my body. Because when I started doing it, I was dancing the practice, and that was, I knew it was just wrong. So many years of breaking it back, and really, you know, breaking it back to stillness. And then it evolved back into movement and back into like the full joy of what I loved about dancing without any of the stuff I didn't love, let's just say that. Having come from a dance background into yoga, the first thing I had to grapple with was how energy was moving through the body. So as a dancer, you know, you work with quality all the time, and within quality, there's a certain current of energy, right, moving through, and you're projecting it out into space. And it's really a dancer's playing field, this sense of energy. But added into, but on top of that is performance, right? It's all about the performance and the presentation. And that is nowhere in yoga, right? It's all about the experience. So I really had to learn how to regulate energy running through my body, not as a presentation, but as an experience. And that was rich for me and still continues to be rich. I hope that makes sense. That was the first thing. And the second thing that was really big for me was the whole, how I was trained, the expectations, the approach, basically like the incredible cruelty of bringing up a dancer. It's like cutthroat, and I didn't even start as a kid. I started as a teenager, you know, so I came in having to catch up. So I basically had like techniques stuffed into my body over 4 years at a really fine dance school. And I was like, I'm doing it. You know, I was so struck. I so wanted to be a dancer. You know, I had all the passion, all of that kind of incredible, like, an amazing stallion running through my body, and then the technique stuffed in, and then it was like I was so stuck by the time I arrived in New York to like do this thing I was trained to do that I didn't realize this, but that was like the first time I had to take it all back. I laid on the floor with a woman named Zina Romet doing floor bar. So, you know, as a dancer, you stand up and you do the bar and then you go across the floor with your movements. But I had to spend an entire year like lying on the floor, bringing the legs up, just like, how does movement, again, move through my body without someone yelling at me, right? So I had to go deep into my own kindness. And so there's this psychological thing with kindness for me. So if it's not kind, I won't do it. And I won't be part of the chain of teaching unkindness. So it's been such an extraordinary freedom psychologically, but physically. No performance, no meanness. And that, of course, that practice has shifted. Like, I find that as I get older, you know, I'm always honing the kindness, which has turned into really an opening of love. And I feel that as I practice and as I share the practice with my students and as they share their practice with me. So I feel, you know, very connected to movement and freedom and kindness and playfulness. So it's become this extraordinary thing that I wish that I had had more in my dance career, but it's okay. So I'm continually observant. And how to be observant? Well, see, the practice provides. So there's pranayama, and very interesting things come up in pranayama. Guidance, you know, and sitting, meditation is another place to gain insight. So, you know, it doesn't take any movement. You just sit and clear and breathe and do the sitting, and it's a tool to watch and listen. And then I also, you know, came into or met shamanism, and that has been so interesting to me because I never struggled with. Okay, so when I stopped dancing, I tried all different other means to support myself, right? I was like, I'm gonna do this. I wasn't a choreographer. I knew I wasn't a dance teacher. And so I tried this and that. And so then I like really committed to the yoga path for my life. I didn't even think about like making a living at it. It's surprising that one can now, and wonderful. But I couldn't let go of my body. Because that's where spirit, that's where like everything comes from for me. It's like I get the messages from the body. I get insight from my body. It doesn't come, you know, like I just, the future, the past, the present is all, I just identify with the body, and I'll probably run into problems with that in the future. But for now, it's like I'm using it, you know? So shamanism is like, works on an energetic level, and it does the same thing that the practice does, that the you know, like all the components of yoga practice does. It clears you out. So it's just this constant clearing, which gives you access to deeper insight from wherever it comes from, and that's how it's worked for me. Sometimes I use a word quietly, like I whisper love. And I move only when I have the feeling of whatever that means in the moment in my body. And so I usually use the word love more than kindness, because kindness is like, I don't know, but love is more to the point for me. And when I move from that place, it is so extraordinary. It doesn't matter what I do. It doesn't matter what anybody does. If they're doing it from love, in love, permeated, swimming in love, then it's wonderful. It's the only way I could really describe how it feels. It feels right. It's kind of ties into the finding and charting my path according to love. Has been, it's probably coming along at my age, 55, middle of my 50s. Just sort of went through a super big change of life. And expectations change. Maybe actually my expectations are like hanging on to what I was physically. And so I have to watch. And through pranayama, I found that I was being extremely judgmental of my inability to hang on to physical strength, right? And I was being unkind. And so I have begun to really examine what my body wants to do and how to be a graceful, present, wise woman. And that's one step at a time, because the change is happening really for all of us, but especially for a woman at this juncture, right? I have some very, very dear, close women friends who are just a little ahead of me in age, and they are my guides. And actually, it's very exciting to let go of competitiveness with myself, I think is part of it. Like I do want to stand on my arms. I do want to like be able to sprint across the room as long as I possibly can. And so I will hone my practice to be able to live my life. What I can offer is that the listening becomes key. And listening, like not to your thoughts, but to your body, actually. Like, is it processing? Is it emotionally clear? And, I wasn't. And so I found solutions to the moment which I'm in right now, which I feel like, some symptoms that I was really suffering from are gone. So, like you can look at, say, hot flashes, right? They can be really intense, or memory loss, or, that horribly like loss of brain function. Whatever it is that one can suffer from, it's a message. Like how can you find support for these aspects of your body? It's like probably like there's a big shift and your body is recalibrating and working. How can you support that so that your system can shift smoothly? And everybody wants to be graceful. Everybody wants to go with the flow, but sometimes it's very difficult. So listen, and you'll find it. If you want to know personally, what I found was probiotics. Like I was feeling that I wasn't processing my food. Like I was feeling bloaty and never satisfied and had terrible sugar cravings, and it was like ramping up. And so, I've known about probiotics, but all of a sudden it was like, oh no, I have to make my own kefir. I have to do this. And I did it, and sure enough, some symptoms subsided. So, it's the deep listening. And so the practice supports us in that. That's an offering of our practice. So I live on this island shelter island. It sounds exactly the way it is. It's just a little nestled place. And it was a perfect place for me because I learned how to be kind of self-sufficient in the practice. I didn't really have present teachers. Of course, I had teachers that I heard in my mind, but I spent a lot of time alone on the mat. And that has been the most incredibly fruitful experience. I'm so happy for that. On the other hand, it really emphasized a part of my personality that is perhaps not most serving me, which is to avoid everything. So on an island, you could just get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller into your own little explorations. But at some point, I really felt the wider world calling me to teach more, calling me to say yes as opposed to no, thank you. And so here I am, on video, into a wider community. And so if you join and partake in the class offerings here on Yoga Anytime, let me know how it goes. Because I'm actually super excited to have a wider community. So part of the expansion off of the little island on which I live is that I've been going trekking into the city, which is a 2.5-hour trip each way, to work with a woman who has developed this technique of like a kind of resistance band therapy. She is an ex-dancer or a former dancer, and she's developed this work with resistance bands that have allowed me to move from my center and actually to feel expansive. Whereas I was a person that felt like strength was something that I had to kind of pull in and hold together, but it's switched the way I think about energy in the body and where strength comes from. So now I feel like strength comes from my center, and how wide can it go? Her name is Martha Yoshida, and she's been wonderful to work with, and Rodney has been a long time, very deep teacher for me, and way back to Jenny Kapuler, an Iyengar teacher in New York City. And then I have this incredible matrix of other teachers whose words I hear coming out of my mouth, and how could I list so many of them? And they've been so important, and I thank them for their presence in my life. And just a parting thought is that be exactly where you are. Have faith that it's the right place, no matter how difficult it is. And this subject called yoga is huge, and everyone has their own individual approach and kind of, melding of it and working of it, and yours is important. And the information that you need will come to you when you need it. I'll just give you this funny example. Is the Yoga Sutra, right? I used to read it and I got nothing. I could get the, now is the time to do yoga, and yoga's chitta vritti, nirodha, and there was maybe 2 others in the entire book that I got. And more recently, I went back to it, and I started reading through it, right? And what it said to me, what stood out was, follow your path and do it your way. And then I was like, well, is that really what it said? And I went back and I read other sutras, and I heard that again. Now, that's not classically what the sutra is saying. Maybe, maybe not, I don't know. But you know what? I trust it. And I felt like I learned something really important, that everyone, that's a really, know that all of the sacred texts, all of this extraordinary information, and there's so much of it, is for you to play in, and for you to really own is the wrong word. Live, breathe, let it pulsate through you. And that's the best thing you can do, because we need it. We need you.